call Florida in the Al Gore column.
Florida goes Bush. The presidency is Bush.
But this race is simply too close to call.
But Bush up by 980.
The 2000 presidential election exposed the delicate balance between the rights of voters and the responsibilities of democratic institutions. To understand the intensity of the 2000 election, we have to look at the political landscape that shaped it. The United States was coming off 8 years of Bill Clinton's presidency, a period of economic prosperity but also political controversy. The late 1990s saw record job growth, a budget surplus, and rising wages. But Clinton's impeachment scandal over his affair with Monica Lewinsky left the nation deeply divided, fueling debates about morality and leadership. With Clinton unable to run for a third term, his vice president, Al Gore, emerged as the Democratic nominee. He positioned himself as the candidate of experience, promising to continue the economic success of the Clinton years while championing environmental reform and social security protections. His running mate, Senator Joe Lieberman, was the first Jewish American on a major party's presidential ticket, chosen to appeal to moderates and reinforce integrity after the Clinton scandal. On the Republican side, Texas Governor George W. Bush, who was son of former President George H.W. Bush, ran as a Washington outsider, promising to restore honor to the White House and push for tax cuts, educational reform, and a stronger military in what he called compassionate conservatism. His running mate, former Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney, brought foreign policy expertise and reinforced Bush's image as a steady leader. Presidential elections in the United States are decided by the Electoral College, not the popular vote. In this, each state gets a certain amount of electoral votes based on its population. There were many major issues for this election, but above all was leadership. Who had the vision and responsibility to lead the U.S. into the 21st century? With the candidates set, the battle for the White House began. The 2000 campaign was one of contrast, experience versus change, Washington insider versus outsider. Both campaigns focused heavily on key swing states, especially Florida, whose 25 electoral votes could tip the election.
If Florida goes Republican, the vice president would need to win most of the remaining late campaign battlegrounds. Washington and Oregon in the west, Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and West Virginia in the heartland.
Florida's history as a battleground state made it an example of the country's divisions. Every vote in the Sunshine State mattered.
Despite the bravado, the schedule over the last 48 hours reflected a major worry. Florida, home of Governor Jeb Bush.
And when he looked me in the eye and said, Florida is going to be Bush Cheney country, I believe him.
Bush campaigned extensively in key swing states in large rallies, especially in Florida, who his brother was the governor of. He used his folksy, relatable style to win over voters.
Most experts can't figure a victory for the Republican nominee that doesn't include Florida.
If we make the right choices, I'm telling you, just imagine the country that we can create, where we transcend our differences and bring people together. We stop discriminating against people and we leave people alone.
Gore's campaign was in a tough spot as he had to distance himself from Clinton the person, but tie himself to the economic prosperity of the Clinton administration as he was the vice president. Similar to Bush, he made many visits to Florida. He was less charismatic than Bush, but had much more experience. He emphasized prosperity and progress as key themes.
And I ask you to entrust me with the presidency so we can create that kind of future. I want to fight for you. I want to fight for your families, for Florida in the future. God bless you and thank you for putting me over the top tonight. Thank you.
This election exemplified the right of citizens to choose their leader and the government's responsibility to ensure a transparent process. After extensive campaigning by both candidates, national polls were dead even. Only time could tell who would become the next president of the United States.
Election Day, the day to choose a new president for a new century.
Election Day arrived on November 7, 2000. Over 100 million Americans cast their ballots, exercising their fundamental democratic right. Election officials had the responsibility to make sure each and every single vote was counted, as this would be one of the closest in history. By nightfall, the results were clear in all but one state, Florida. It was initially called for Al Gore. Then it was put back into too close to call. Finally, Bush led Gore in Florida by just 1,784 votes. Under state law, the margin triggered an automatic recount, setting the stage for a month-long battle over the integrity of the electoral process.
As Bill mentioned, there is a recount underway in the state of Florida.
The recount could take place today, and the Attorney General of Florida said it could be done within a day.
The recount would highlight the tension between the rights of voters to have their ballots counted and the responsibility of election officials to ensure accuracy. The Florida recount revealed flaws in the electoral system. Ballots with unclear markings known as hanging chads became symbols of confusion and controversy. Meanwhile, the butterfly ballot design in Palm Beach County led to thousands of miscast votes.
In the meantime, we're also dealing with an issue up in the Palm Beach area where some voters have claimed that the voting procedure up there is confusing, and some have complained, a considerable number have complained, that they may have voted the wrong way by mistake. And this is how they say it happened. If you can see here, this is the ballot.
As the recount dragged on, lawsuits flew. Gore's team pushed for hand recounts in Democratic-leaning counties, while Bush's campaign argued that changing the rules mid-election violated fairness. Voters took to the streets, arguing that the election wasn't fair or that their votes weren't counted properly. Neither candidate had gotten to 270 votes, and Florida's 25 electoral votes would decide it.
I am not the only one that was confused, and many people probably voted for Buchanan, meaning to vote for Gore.
We have people shuffling ballots around like they're playing cards. We have people bending ballots.
With Gore's team battling to continue the recount and Bush's team battling to end it, chaos ensued throughout the state. No one knew how this recount process would end, and no one knew who would become the next president of the United States. The recount revealed not just technical challenges, but deeper questions about democracy itself. Who bears the responsibility for ensuring elections are free and fair? And what happens when the process breaks down? Court cases and legal battles were a huge part of this election, portraying the responsibilities of the judicial branch. It eventually got to the Supreme Court of the United States, but before we get there, it began with Gore requesting a hand recount in 4 crucial counties. The Florida Secretary of State, Katherine Harris, who also happened to be a Republican who worked on Bush's campaign, said the recount should be finished by November 14th. The Gore campaign wanted more time, so they petitioned the Florida Supreme Court, and the deadline was extended to November 26th. Only 2 counties recounted in time, but this had shrunk Bush's lead in Florida to 537 votes. The Florida Supreme Court granted Gore's request for a larger recount of questionable ballots, most of which were thrown out, as we mentioned before, due to the hole-punching issues or hanging chads. It had now been 36 days since Election Day, so the U.S. Supreme Court intervened. On December 12, 2000, the U.S. Supreme Court delivered its ruling in Bush v. Gore. In a 5-4 decision, the court ordered Florida's recount to stop, citing unequal standards as a violation of the Equal Protection Clause. This landmark decision meant that by 537 votes, George W. Bush had won Florida and the presidency. But it also left behind a nation divided, with critics questioning the court's rule in deciding an election. Bush v. Gore highlighted the fragile balance between protecting the rights of voters and the responsibility of institutions to uphold constitutional principles.
United States Supreme Court ruling about an hour and a half ago that a recount most likely cannot take place, setting down.
Good evening. Just moments ago, I spoke with George W. Bush and congratulated him on becoming the 43rd President of the United States.
The 2000 election reshaped America's electoral landscape. It exposed vulnerabilities in voting systems and renewed calls for reform, such as the Help America Vote Act of 2002, which replaced outdated voting procedures. The right to vote is the cornerstone of democracy, but it carries with it the responsibility to safeguard that right for every citizen. The 2000 election proved that democracy depends not just on the right to vote, but on the responsibility to protect it.